London, a city once at the centre of a vast and powerful empire. In the name of the British Crown, lands and countries were claimed and colonised.
I'll be voting no.
We support the
No
voice.
one understands it.
We need your help.
Vote yes.
Back home, debate is heating up on the prospect of amending modern Australia's founding legal document. But before we can unpack that, it's important to understand where it came from.
Early British settlers were ruled from afar. Many of the laws and orders for the colonies were dictated by the government here at Westminster. That would only work for so long, but I'm getting a little ahead of the story.
Back in Canberra, these documents reveal Captain James Cook was given secret instructions to claim the Great Southland for Britain in the late 1700s, but he was told to get consent from the natives.
You are also with the consent of the natives to take possession of convenient locations in the country in the name of the King of Great Britain. In his journal here at the National Library of Australia, Cook writes about his first contact with Uighur leaders at Botany Bay.
As we approached the shore, they all made off, except two men who seemed resolved to oppose our landing. One of them took up a stone and threw at us, which caused my firing a second musket, loaded with small shot.
So when this boat first came into the bay and our people saw the white ballooning cloud-like structure, saw the white faces, really thought and was scared that this was the dead returning. So they were trying to get rid of it. They weren't supposed to be here.
Cook had arrived on land already home to hundreds of Aboriginal tribes or clans, including Noeline Timbree's people. They had long-held politics, laws and religion.
This country wasn't built on discovery. It wasn't born from discovery. It was born from conflict from the very moment of first arrival.
But that didn't stop the British from sending over more boats, and in 1788, the first convict settlement was established, beginning a deadly period of conflict over the land that led to widespread dispossession and displacement for the native groups. The British acted as though the lands belonged to no one, implementing a legal principle called terra nullius. By 1901, 6 colonies had been established. They'd joined forces to create a new nation. In the decade leading up to Federation, colonial leaders held a number of meetings and debates before pen was put to paper to create the final constitution. This was approved by eligible voters in colonial referendums and passed by a British Act of Parliament. With the seal of approval from 81-year-old Queen Victoria, the colonies became states and the Commonwealth of Australia was formed.
Anne-Marie, you are a senior curator here at the National Archives. We are looking at Australia's century-old constitution. Just how important is this document?
Well, this document, the Constitution for the Commonwealth of Australia, is significant in that it sets out the rules for how the Australian government works. So it sets out how the central government will relate to the 6 state governments and later the territories. It sets out the 3 arms of government, so the Parliament, the Executive and the Judicature. It sets out things like the financial arrangements between the Commonwealth and the states. It sets out the powers of the Australian Parliament, and it crucially sets out how the Constitution can be changed.
Well, here it's a hands-off policy, it's a lights-off policy. Is it easy to change what's in that?
It's not easy to physically interact with this document, as we can see, and it's not easy to change either. As we know, there have been 44 referenda, which is how this document sets out change will occur, and only 8 of those have been passed. There needs to be a majority of all the people in Australia and also a majority of the states. And that's quite a high bar to set.
Looking at that original document, it serves as a reminder that the original constitution excluded Indigenous people. It states that the Commonwealth wasn't to make laws for them or to include them in the census.
And it stayed that way until the 1967 referendum.
We want to become a part of our country.
The eyes of the world are on Australia.
The result of the referendum on the Aboriginal question was a resounding triumph for the Aboriginal cause.
Now it's our turn to decide whether to change this document again. The question we're being asked, whether to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice.
My name is Ilham Isaac. I'm open to be persuaded to vote yes in this referendum, but I'm yet to be. I'm a journalist. I originally come from China, from the Uighur minority group from the far western region of China. As the political situation and the Uighur persecution deteriorated, I finally decided to migrate to Australia and eventually became an Australian citizen last year in October. Ever since I became an Australian citizen, I've been really thinking hard about this referendum, and I would say so far I'm open to be persuaded, but not yet persuaded. Because of my background, I have this natural skepticism towards the government, so I always endeavor to research the problem at hand and try to educate myself from both perspectives. I think changing the Constitution is a very significant thing. I don't think we should take it lightly. So when we decide to change our constitutions, I feel more comfortable when I have more details about what exactly my choice would entail. I'm just not convinced with the idea that we just decide to change it first and then really work out the details as to how to change it. Although I am not yet convinced to vote yes in this referendum, I think there's a real chance that if this referendum fails, Australia's reputation will be tarnished internationally, and that may not necessarily be fair because ultimately the voters may be rejecting this referendum because of how it is presented, because of how it's worded, not necessarily because Australians don't really care about the Aboriginal people.
Hello, welcome to my home. My name is Nikira and this is where I live.
Welcome to Tennant Creek small community camp called Village Camp. It's a good thing living in town camp, that's all right, living close to family. It's an antique government house. This house was a new house in Tennant Creek in the town camp. It's got built in 2020. It's a 4-bedroom house. We can't even plant a tree here because of the gravel. We can't put a grass here, safe for the kids to play on the grass because it's all gravel up. I was in this house for 2 weeks since we didn't have water running. I end up calling housing, reporting it, still no water. So I can't even wash clothes, can't even cook feed. They have one side brand on it and doesn't have a lights at the side. It's not a safe house the way I look at it. Little easy stuff, but you can wait for a year for that to get fixed. The whole door needs to be taken out and put a new door here. I live with my family, my cousins, sisters. Right now it's 13 people. Live in a house which is overcrowded. It's, there's some kids are going a different way. I like to grow my kids up with discipline is in a good way, Not getting ideas from other kids, but I like to live with my kids in my own place. Just me and my kids.
I'm not allowed to play there because there's hop shops things and let's have long grass from snakes.
Kids always come at house 4 and play with us.
Oh no.
This is what we're doing today. And we have everything.
This is the glitter, what we paint in our nails.
And this is the nail polish what we use.
We're going to my grandfather's house, Norman Frank, over there.
Welcome to my house. Come in. My name is Norman anyway. Come inside. This is my house. This is one big lounge. And off the lounge, we've got 3 bedrooms. My bedroom right at the back there, the middle room's the boys, the girls, the first room. This is my fridge, this is where I keep my medication. That's all my tucker I keep there too. This house is cleaned out and nothing here, it's bare because of bed bugs. We had bed bugs here. That's my second time this year. You'll be scratching and itching all night, mate. You weren't able to sleep. It's like hell, mate. And this is the NT housing. You know, it's belonged to a government. This is their house. This is not my house. Where my rent money? Where's that to pay $600 to the pest control? Where's all that? When I asked them, they said to me, that's your responsibility. That's bullshit. It was me, my money, my pension came out, paid for everything. This is an old 40-year-old house, mate. The next bed bug in here, mate, I'm pissing off. I'm happy I got this house. And I'm not really happy how we get treated and put here. When I first got this house, it had never been renovated, never been sprayed out, never been even cleaned, never even been painted. And if you live in a house like this, a brick house or iron tin shed, I tell you it's a killer. Really hot, it burns.
And then we're going to get other funding from NTAIC and Cinecorp and Buckley,
I feel sorry for my people on the outskirts where they got no running water, no power. They move out in the shade, in the bullshit because of that heat in summer all the time. At least they got a shelter.
We got a own generator, not really suitable for main power or light, but this for Sergeant Pond or what's more, we got a TV here.
What are you watching on the TV?
Harmonway, news and all that. Football, that's right. AFL. Power, they're too good. My name's Stephen Kemp from here, driving camp. It's a place as a community. They're made of tin sheds. I sleep outside, cool area. We borrow someone else's car or someone else come. Tell them to go and get water. Sometimes we walk down ourselves. I'm from another country, but I stay here. People, they talk about you not belong to this place. We got no house here. Go home where you belong. That's what they say. It's not your country. Yeah, you got a place like this one, you might as well say you can't get a house in town. Oh, bush. Because I like this place. It's quieter. Peace and quiet.
And we try to get things, happening and let the whole country know what it's like here.
We're cooking kangaroo tail. We gotta eat it. We light fire and then we put alfoil in the kangaroo tail and then we put it there in the fire.
My organisation we call Uighur, and that's mean in Warramus standing strong, build better housing. cooler with the breezeway. Providers need to help and support more, especially our organisations and government. Need to collaborate with Umbrani people, how we're living.
Sing on. G'day, my name's Tom Forrest. I'm a proud Yorta man from the East Kimberley region, and I'm on the streets to find out and ask people what they think the relationship is like between First Nations people and non-Indigenous people. Let's go find out.
Excuse me, madam, I'm from the ABC.
Can I ask you what an Australian looks like?
Extremely handsome creatures. How would you just describe an Aussie, essentially?
Like us. An Aussie itself doesn't have like a certain identity.
Can I ask you what an Australian looks like?
White, blonde and blue eyes.
Why do you say that?
The weather.
I guess pop culture's just like drilled into us, all the stereotypical shrimp on the barbie sort of stuff, surfing and mates.
We are so many and varied. I don't know if you can even make a little square and put the iconic Australian in it.
Someone with an Aussie accent, like that's really, I don't know, and even that's that's a bad one.
Typical Australian has blonde hair, blue eyes and freckles.
When I think of an Australian person, I do think of Indigenous people.
What makes you an Australian?
I call Dubbo.
Easygoing, bit of a larrikin, hardworking.
Take sickies.
Having a fair go.
Go to the pub.
Fun to get along with.
Loud around.
Loves a good laugh, yeah.
People that used to drink in this bar before the dark people were allowed in don't come here anymore. They just go to other places. So they've chased a lot of white trade out of the bar. I don't know how much. I think if they were out of the bar, the white people would drift back in again. It's just my opinion.
Do you have any Aboriginal friends?
I do, yeah.
Do you have any Aboriginal people in your circle?
No, I don't.
It shouldn't be the divide it is, of course. Like Mum said, paths don't really cross as much.
A key survey tells us that we aren't socialising with each other, with only 17% of non-Indigenous folk hanging out with Aboriginal mob.
Well, what do we make up? 3% of the population, so, statistically not every non-Indigenous Australian's going to have, one-on-one interaction with an Indigenous person.
Oh, well, I don't know any of them, but I think they're quite nice, friendly people if you know them sort of thing,
Do you have Aboriginal friends?
Yeah, I do. I actually do, like from middle school through high school.
Just because we don't mix together is not because we're prejudiced or anything like that, it's just that we don't get around to doing it, sort of thing.
It's a small community and everyone gets along with each other and there's no real division.
Outside of work, I have a lot of non-Indigenous friends. They're all pretty cool and welcoming.
I think that it will always be within the Aboriginal that he is an Aboriginal and he'd like to remain with his own people.
I actually associate with a lot of other people other than my own group. I'm a social person.
I have such a big following and friends across the country who are non-Indigenous who also want to learn about my culture. So through me interacting in my friendship, they've been able to learn and embrace Aboriginal culture and understand it more better.
The huge percentage of our society who's never had any meaningful contact is just, going off these negative focusing news reports.
You go straight to social media, you look at the comments about what people are saying and stuff. Very negative, very violent towards Aboriginal culture and people, so yeah, there's definitely still a division.
My life has no interaction at all. I don't see them in workplaces where I work. I don't see them in my suburbs, and I think, why not? Why is there still this big divide?
At the end of the day, we know when we socialise with each other, we get to know each other as human beings and not just stereotypes. Then we can actually think about, well, this is a problem that's not just affecting me, this is actually something that is affecting all of us. And as your friend, I want to help.
Hi, I'm Dan Borscher. With a month to go before the referendum vote, I'm checking in on how the campaign is unfolding. With me this week is Naomi Moran, the Chief Executive of the Koori Mail, Australia's leading Indigenous newspaper. She's also the co-chair of First Nations Media. Naomi, great to have you along. Thanks for joining me from Lismore.
Thanks for having me. This is deadly.
Proper. Look, if you were thinking about this week's coverage of the Voice to Parliament referendum in the frame of a headline for your newspaper, what would it be?
Something along the lines of, I'm right and you're wrong. And I think that's based on, what we're seeing in terms of people really thinking that their answer is the only answer and not actually being willing to listen.
This is about the polarisation, isn't it?
And I think that it's a bit of a concern that there isn't a focus on the ability to just listen to both sides of the conversation in a really respectful manner. I can't help but think that perhaps Australia isn't as mature as they think in being able to lead these conversations. Is the conversations within that leadership centred around, egos and the idea that, somebody's answer is the only answer, or is, the leadership that perhaps the rest of the nation is looking for is guidance rather than influence. And I think that creates a lot of, angst and confusion and people not knowing, what to do. I think I would like to see more of a focus around how do we just listen to the conversations and make sure that people are making decisions and choices leading into October 14 based on their story and their experiences and making sure that their vote is genuine.
Naomi, this week we've seen a focus on Michael Long and the long walk arriving into Canberra. We've seen claim and counterclaim around Marcia Langton and racism in Australia. And we've seen the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, telling the Press Club that colonialism was an overall good thing for Australia. I wonder what sort of impact you see all of these things in the media having an influence on those who haven't decided how they're going to vote yet.
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that because I actually had a conversation today with two people at the airport. I'd overheard them talking about the upcoming referendum, two non-Indigenous people. And so I approached them with the willingness to listen and understand why they thought the way that they did. And their thoughts were, we're really confused, we don't know what this means, we don't know how to vote, we don't feel like we have enough information to process this and make a decision. A lot of their concerns were the misinformation, or a lot of their concerns were the things that they were seeing in the media. And I mean, you and I only know too much just how much information, how people receive that based on the media and the perspective of media can contribute to people feeling like they either don't have enough information or that influence is greater than them being able to make that informed choice for themselves. So when I do the work myself to dissect how people are reacting the way that they are, or what motivates them, or what's driving them to be in whatever position that they're in, I wonder what their story is. And sometimes I wonder whether, for us mob, our decisions will be based on one really key thing, and that's trauma. So when we look at the history of our people and the history of those that have come before us, I wonder what those people who were on the receiving end of trauma because the nation didn't want them to exist, what would they say? For example, my great-grandparents, when their son, my grandfather, was taken away when he was 9 years old, and he lived off country for 10 years before he could come back home, and he was sent to Kinchilla Boys Home. I wonder if he was here today, what his vote would be. And then I think it would only be based on his trauma story. So he would say, I will vote yes because I never want to see that type of policy embedded in the Australian culture for the future generations, including, for example, my 4-year-old son. Or he would say, I have absolutely no faith, trust, or any hope that this nation will take what happened to me serious enough to make that change. And perhaps he would vote no.
Most media organisations are considering how to do coverage every day. The Koori Mail is a really interesting part of that landscape because predominantly your audience is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. How does that impact the way that you cover the referendum?
Yeah, and I think it's not just where Koori Mail stands, but when we look at Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander media and our sector. And obviously I'm very passionate about our Indigenous media sector.
And a big advocate through the First Nations media.
Definitely, and you know, whether you're a newspaper, whether it's television, whether it's our bush broadcasters from around the nation, I will be the first to say, let's acknowledge that Indigenous media have always carried the voices of our people. And it's just that nobody has listened. So for Indigenous media, our responsibility is always to report on issues and stories or you know, a national agenda or movement based on facts. And so what the Koori Mail has actively done is made sure that we take that responsibility of printing the facts. But also we have a responsibility to share opinions and voices from all of our communities and their thoughts and how these issues are impacting them. But that deep dive into storytelling and what that means and how that influences somebody's decision, that's pretty special.
What do you think the country looks like the day after the referendum?
Exhausted.
Ready for a lie down?
Exhausted. And I'm not going to lie, I've had a vision in my head of both sides of the conversation sitting there like this going, I told you so. This isn't about who's right and wrong in terms of you're wrong, I'm right. This is about whatever the outcome is, just remember it does not stop anybody from doing the work. At the end of the day, how people receive this we cannot control. I think what we need to do as blackfellas is really take a look at things like our stories as individuals and communities, the stories of those that are no longer here and left this legacy of incredible black leadership that we should be, you know, attempting to follow every single day and reflect on that and what that means now to move forward in our leadership come October 15. I just think there's a lot to unpack for us after the outcome moving forward and the key learnings throughout this whole journey and what that's meant for us and how we identify as blackfellas and how we continue to do the work to make sure that our people feel like that they can put faith and trust and hope in us.
Naomi Moran, thanks so much for your company. Always great to yarn.
Thanks for having me.